brand new notepads are now available in my shop. Look how adorable, and a print set of the adventures of Kit, the Kitty Explorer. Thank you so much for checking it out. Link is in the description. Hello everyone! It wasn't super long ago since I made the most recent part in my monochromatic cat art series, the pink one, but I've kind of been dreading this next color in the order, so I felt like let's just get it over with. And just to recap, if you're new to this series, I'm picking out every single marker that I own in one specific color and I try to make art with it. So far I've done green, blue, purple, and lastly pinks, which means that today it's time for red. And if you would like to learn more about how to use markers, for example, or anything else art or craft related, I can recommend you to check out today's sponsor, Craftsy. Craftsy is your online community and resource for all things creative. You will find a ton of inspiring and in-depth classes on a wide range of subjects like cake decorating, sewing, painting, drawing, photography, embroidery, woodworking, jewelry making, and so much more. While it's getting closer to fall season, my favorite, I'm getting the urge to bake, and on Craftsy there are so many fun and creative classes on how to make all kinds of desserts and cake. In this class by Abby Dodge, you will learn how to make 6 different cakes with one pan only, all from pumpkin spice roll to banana sour cream cake. And if you want to combine baking and art, then this class might be for you. The joy of cake painting, to get inspiration for a delicious masterpiece. And no matter your interest or skill level, I know that you will find something to spark that creativity. The instructional videos are taught by talented and friendly experts that walks you through each technique with step-by-step demonstrations. And if Craftsy sounds like something that you would like to join, then the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium memberships to Craftsy for only $1.49. That's amazing. Thank you so much to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to our red markers. So again, I have collected every single red marker that I could find from my collection, and to be honest, I am not super thrilled. Red is not my most used color, and since I'm doing like nature scenes, it might be difficult to make something that feels somewhat natural. Unless the scene takes place on like Mars or something, that would be an option with cute little alien kitties. Anyway, I'm gonna start by swatching and sorting these, and then let's make some red art. Alright, so the different kinds of markers that I have are Copics, Touch 5, Arteza, Ohuhu, Pro Marker, Spectrum Noir, Magic Marker, Tria, and Flex Marker. And do you remember these guys, the chameleon markers that has sort of like a built-in blender pen tip that you touch together with the marker nib, so the color would become sort of like a gradient. And last and least is the Artist Loft markers, crusty and lovely as always. So to get an idea what different tones of red I've got to work with, I make a swatch card, and here I can also eventually sort out all the tones that are either too yellow, too orange, too pink, too purple. And again, and I say this in every monochromatic art video, it is really hard to determine what is actually, in this case, red. There are more cooler reds that are more purple or pinkish, and warmer reds that appear more orange or brown, and we have more bright and vivid tones and more desaturated grayish tones. Also, for all the other colors that I've used, like green or blue, purple, pink even, there is a light green, there is a light blue, light purple, light pink, but light red, it is technically pink, and pink is kind of its own color, at least in this art series, but I needed lighter red tones too, or else there will only be like mid-tones and darker tones, and we need a color or tone variation. So I tried to sort out the light reds that are leaning more towards the cooler purple tones that appears more pink. So here we have them, and after I've swatched them all and crossed out all the duplicates and all the tones that I thought didn't fit into the red color scheme, we're left with 73 markers, which may be the lowest amount of markers in this challenge series so far, but I am not complaining because I'm sure it will be a challenge anyway. Then I sort all the markers into different color groups: lighter tones, desaturated midtones, bright midtones, and darker tones. So now when searching for a specific color on the swatch card, I can more easily find the marker that I'm looking for. So I was kind of joking earlier about this scene having to take place on Mars because it will be all red, but it got me thinking about what would be the equivalent to Mars on Earth, and that it would probably be a desert. A desert scene would also add a little variation to the scenes that I've already made, so I think this will be a fun addition to the series. It was also a lot of fun trying to figure out what kinds of plants there would be. I have never been to a desert in my life, so I am not very familiar with the nature and the environment. So I had to look at a lot of reference photos, but most of it's still just made up and arranged in a way to look more balanced and pretty. And I think I could have added even more details, to be honest, but I also wanted it to still feel like a desert, so I didn't want to cram in too many cacti or trees or plants or bushes or whatever. I wanted it to feel open and wide. As usual, I print the line art on smooth Bristol board, and for you who have been asking, I'm using an inkjet printer. The ink works well with alcohol markers, but not that well with water-based mediums like watercolor, so make sure to keep that in mind. So yeah, here we have it, ready to be colored, and I'm using the swatch card to find the colors that I want to use, and then I start with the sky. So the other pieces in the series has been following some sort of timeline, accidentally at first, but then I just went with it. The different scenes has been taking place during early evening, the night, and now previously morning and the sunrise. So this would take place during the day, even though I had to draw the sun a little lower on the sky so it would fit in the drawing. I don't think I have ever drawn a red sky before, so I was a little nervous, but I'm starting with the lightest color for the sun, and then I'm going gradually darker and darker further out to the edges. Usually when I draw a sky, which is often a night or evening sky, it goes from light closer to the horizon and then darker and darker further up. But I want to make something different for this piece, and I think this method with a more circular gradient instead of a horizontal one gives more movement to the piece, and it feels like the sky and sun is actually radiating heat. Once I've used the marker, I cross it off the swatch list and then I put it to the side. It makes it easier for me to keep track of the colors that I have used and which colors that I have left. For the tree in the foreground, I'm using more grayish reds and some yellow tone for the trunk and for the leaves or whatever it is. I think it is some sort of cactus tree. I went with some brighter tones. In all my monochromatic pieces, I have had some sort of tree where the cats can climb and sit in. Speaking of the cats are like the main star in these pieces, and I haven't even talked about them yet. In these one color pieces, I put the same amount of cats in each, and usually they are just sitting there or they are sleeping or something like that. But since this piece is a little less detailed than usual, I want to make the cats a little more prominent and playful, just so that there is something more happening, and I really love the one in the foreground chewing on the cactus. I think what I struggled the most with throughout this whole drawing was to add different values and contrast and find a good balance between warmer and cooler tones. I was dreading working with this color before I even started, and it actually turned out to be the most difficult color that I worked with so far. I didn't want to go in too dark or too bright and vivid from the beginning, so I had to gradually add darker or brighter tones to deepen the shadows and add more values and contrast. I really try to use cooler and warmer tones separately to create color variation between the different plants and cacti, for example, but it feels like it all looks just the same at the end. Perhaps in this case I should have started with the background and worked my way to the foreground, because once I start adding the background it feels like all the things that I had already colored in the mid and foreground, they are kind of just disappearing. It is really a super good practice working with a monochromatic color scheme when it comes to adding values and contrast, but it was really hard too. I have made the background in different layers to illustrate how big the desert is. I also wanted to do sort of like a block gradient, or whatever you could call it, where the different layers are different tones of red. The mountains furthest in the back are the lightest, and then it gets gradually darker and darker the closer to the foreground we get. Besides the foreground itself, it is lighter, but don't try to make sense out of this. I don't even know what I'm doing. Also, in each monochromatic piece that I made, there is some sort of cat statue, as you may have noticed, which I could have incorporated here too. I think it would have looked really interesting with a stone cat maybe, but for some reason I stuck with my first idea to have a cat mountain in the background. It is a little more subtle, but I think it fits with the environment. But yeah, as I mentioned, once I started adding the background, it feels like things just started to blend together, and it was very hard to separate the different layers and objects, so I just did my best. Again, red was such a tricky color to work with. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I did actually have a lot of fun working on this, even though it was tricky. But red is not a very pleasant color to look at for a longer period of time. As I mentioned several times now, it just felt like everything was starting to blend together. At the end, when I've gone through all the 73 markers, finally I was so happy to see an end to this. And I was starting to finish up all the details, and I could go back and add more of the contrast that I thought was lacking. And I had been a little careful with the very bright reds. I had toned them down quite a bit so it wouldn't be too much before I had a chance to get a good balance. But now, once I had everything laid out, I could go in with the brighter reds and brighten up some parts and make it feel a little more, well, red. I could probably have worked a lot more with this and keep adjusting the contrast and values and saturation, but there is also a risk of overworking, and I don't want to do that. So I think I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. Is it my favorite of the series? Well, not really, but some parts I really like the cats, for example. I like how they are spread out in the image and that they feel very playful. I also really like how the sky turned out. To me, it is the best part of this drawing. I like how this piece stands out from the other ones. And please let me know what you guys think. Is this your favorite of the bunch? And in that case, why? Anyway, I had so much fun working on this, even if I was complaining a little, and even if this was the most challenging one in the series. But I'm so happy to be done with red, because next it will be orange, and I have a pretty good idea what I want to make, so I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, that is all for now. Thanks Craftsy for sponsoring today's video, and thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time. Keep drawing my happy cats. Bye!